and ready to go on to our next topic, which is turning movement demo. Can people hear me?
Yes.
Yes, but
Awesome.
we don't see you.
You don't see me?
I don't see you.
Okay. Let me unshare and reshare.
I don't see him either.
No, we saw your desk, Todd.
Oh, you see me personally? We're still doing that?
Yeah, the punishment factor.
Man. Fine.
Hey, if we have to do it, you have to do it.
Fine. Doesn't seem fair, but okay. All right. Okay. So let's talk about turning movements. There's a couple new things that were implemented during our turning movement implementation, and I think we did a demo of sort of the bare bones turning movement last year at the users conference, but now it's pretty much done. And this was, by the way, the final Tratus piece that needed to be moved over to Jackalope. And so with the conclusion of this, we officially wiped Tratus from our memories forever. There are two new things involved with this, and both of them relate to intersections. So when you collect data, short-term count or continuous counter, you're collecting at a traffic site. And a traffic site has a particular road geometry. It has number of lanes in the positive direction, number of lanes in the negative direction. And that's pretty much it with regards to its geometry, at least as far as we care with regards to traffic data collection. Intersections are more complicated. Intersections can potentially be consists of multiple sites. An intersection has, potentially if it's a cross thing like this, it might have 4 different lanes, and each lane might, or 4 different legs, excuse me, and each leg corresponds to a different site potentially. So it's a whole different animal. And turning movements are associated with intersections and not sites, right? Because the turning movement's all about the vehicle went from the southbound lane to the westbound lane. Maybe that's east, I'm not sure. That's what a turning movement's all about. Looking at the flow of traffic through an intersection. And so that data can't be associated at a site. It actually has to be associated with an intersection which understands how traffic flows between each of these legs. So intersections were introduced with the addition of the turning movement program. And we're in Iowa here right now. And they have a very robust turning movement program. I think they take about 5 billion turning movements a year. That might be an exaggeration, but they have a really robust turning movement program there. How many turning movements do you guys do? I know I just exaggerated it, but if you want to put it in chat just so we can all feel like we don't do enough. Okay. That's not the most interesting intersection, but the intersection management screen is very similar to the traffic site screen. When you click on it, you'll see a list of intersections. In Iowa, the intersections have a particular format. Just like within traffic sites, you can specify your own naming convention, basically, of how you name your intersections. This is what they look like in Iowa. When you double click on one, you actually can view the intersection information at that point. Just like traffic sites, intersections can be split up based on attribute change. So if you change the leg configuration, if a leg gets added or removed, or lanes get added or whatever, you can create an intersection split, which means that prior to the date of the split, the intersection will look one way, and after the date of the split, the intersection will look the new way. And both of those states are stored in the database. So if you report against the old state of the intersection, it will pull up the old configuration. So just like with site splits, we have intersection splits. The screen actually looks very similar to the site screen. It has tabs across the top here. We have general information, which is the intersection name, A lot of the same information that sites have, county. This can, just like with the sites, intersections can belong to a particular agency. There's factor group information because we can compute preliminary AADTs based on turning movement data. So if you have a MyoVision counter out there that's collecting, 24 or 48 hours worth of turning movement data, you can actually factor that up and have, in this case, 4 different AADTs, right? Because there are 4 different legs. So we need to understand the factor grouping there. And then we have other information here that this is customizable, just like in traffic site, you can have custom values that are specific to your state. It's the exact same here. You can have custom values, and these are custom values specific to the way Iowa does business. Over here on the right, we have the leg, the leg diagram. In this case, we have 4 different legs, and you can kind of see how traffic flows between them. We can go to a different site, a different intersection, excuse me, and see different legs. Here's more traditional two-way roads intersecting kind of situation, and you can see all the traffic flow here. In each leg, you need to identify what the permissible turns are. So, in this example, the northbound leg can turn in all three directions. In that diagram we were just looking at, there were a couple legs that they weren't able to go in all the directions. So that's defined here. You can actually identify sites here as well. These are traffic sites. You can assign different sites for each direction. So if your sites are directional, as some of our clients are, you could have, one for the northbound side, or one for the southbound side and the northbound side per leg. You can have a description, and you can see that description here in the leg diagram. We're looking at north, so that is right there. It's kind of hard to see at this zoom level, but on the reports, it's a little bit easier. And you can identify, whether there's sidewalks there, whether there's bike lanes there. This again is for the turning movements. Some of the MyoVisions can track bike path movements as well. So in addition to the lane configurations that we're seeing at each leg, we'll need to understand whether there's bike lanes there so that we can, get the movements correctly. And down here at the bottom is just like the site split. This is where you can make a change and say whether it applies to the entire date range, which would just basically update the existing record, or have it apply and do an intersection split where it would split this intersection into 2, and prior to that date, it would be the old way, and after that date, it's the new way.
Noah shared in the chat now that they are doing about 850 intersections.
Yeah.
This year.
I bet you guys win. You guys can correct me if I'm wrong, but I bet most of you guys don't do 850 intersection counts a year. Crazy turning movement program. Thank you, Noah. So like the site, we have the tabs across the top. This was the general information. We have, of course, just the map. This is the same that you would see here on the lat long. If you were to change the lat long of this intersection. Just like with sites, you can associate documents with them. And so if you have a turning movement diagram that someone has scribbled on, if that's part of your field crew, your field sheet scheduling component, maybe you scan that in and associate it with the intersection for future years. So that's just like with sites, you can associate documents with intersections. The other thing that's new with regards to implementing turning movements is the change in how scheduling is done. And schedules can now be comprised of traffic sites, which is they've always been able to be done by traffic sites, and now intersections as well. So Iowa has, one schedule that has both their traffic sites and intersections in it, and then we know how to deal with that and get the correct field sheet out there if it's an intersection versus a short-term count site. So I'll be going over scheduler at 1:40, so we'll be looking at that later this afternoon. But yes, so now you can schedule both traffic sites and intersections. And that's what that
Lizzie
looks
has
like.
posed a chat to the group asking how many traffic units in attendance are responsible for turning movements.
And a lot of turning movements are also done at the city or MPO level. You know, it's not,
That was her secondary comment, that a lot are under the regional offices or external to these traffic. Okay, so Christy said it's all done out of the regional district and not her program. Some staff can overlap for both the efforts, and Spencer says Missouri does them in a district traffic office.
yeah, I don't think that's uncommon. I'm not picking on you, Iowa, right now, but I usually go to states, you know, if I'm doing demos or something, and say, what do you think? What state do you think has the most like traffic or traffic sites? You know, and people are like, oh, New York or blah blah blah. It's like, no, Iowa, and that's because they count everything. They're responsible for the whole state, and they have like 150,000 sites or something like that.
Margaret said they count them on federal aid, on the federal aid system, where they can't set tubes.
Okay. Well, MyoVision seems to be getting better at that. I don't know I know Idaho does. Is anybody else using MyoVision for their turning movements? Because they don't use tubes, do they? Isn't it all video? Sean says Kentucky only does turning movements as special requests for design projects. I think that's pretty common. So when we get a request, our field techs do them, and one person in central offices processes them. Yeah, I think it's pretty common, is like special counts. Otherwise, it's not something as part of your regular program. Spencer says, we used to collect them with the rest of our count program, but now the districts collect them ahead of major intersection improvement projects. Nicholas says, UDOT used to have a turning movement data collection program under the safety division. That went away with retirements and is now all done through multiple consultants in our pool group of consultant services. So in theory, you know, kind of the whole point of this is, you know, Jackalope does have this feature. If you did want to use it, you know, like most of the Jackalope things, this is not something you have to pay for extra. You know, if you ever did want to bring that back under the umbrella of your consolidated traffic data warehouse, you know, that's something you could do.
Sorry.
Noah
there
said,
are some more. Yeah, I was going to say there are quite a few more comments coming in there.
Okay, so Noah says we use MyoVisions, but we count against the video in the house, not send the video out to get counted. Wow, okay. So, and I'm correct in MyoVision's video technology, right? It's not tubes. Okay, thanks. Noah says that's correct. So,
And then John Missouri, yeah.
BC uses or says in our BC data collection, contractors use MyoVision regularly. It's kind of, that's what I've been hearing, is it seems like MyoVision is winning the turning movement war. I mean, because before MyoVision and before video, turning movements were a pain in the butt. I mean, having a person actually out there with the turning movement board doing this for hours, you know, that's pretty tedious. And MyoVision made all that so much simpler. Iowa has a traffic office, Iowa DOT. Rob from WisDOT says, our traffic program does not collect turning movement counts. Okay. Wow, we got a lot of comments. Yeah. And Nevada does turning movements for special studies only. So like Kentucky, it's a special thing only. Mark Hansen from Iowa says, and we can count faster than real time by speeding up the video speed. Right, that's actually a really good point. Right, So it's better than having a field person out there doing it, because yeah, you can go at 2x or whatever to it. Nicholas says from Utah, yeah, I think we're interested in bringing the data for a warehouse of the data set to help with redundancies that occur, but would require some effort across multiple consultants and UDOT regions to select standards to use to make it easier to process and store the data set. Yeah, so it's not a just easy fix, but yeah, I mean, the idea is it is here. You can use it if you want to. You know, it sounds like there's business hurdles, but it's something that you could do if anybody did want to have a consolidated warehouse for all of the turning movement data. Margaret says, one turning movement count with class from MyoVision is significantly less than collecting each leg. Okay. Price-wise, I assume we're talking about. What does a turning movement count cost, I wonder, for MyoVision? Yeah, oh, then she follows it up and says in terms of cost. Jeff from Iowa says, does anyone release turning movement data to the public or other offices? Well, I know you do, Iowa. Iowa has a really sophisticated interface where you can go and download the turning movement reports, which we'll look at here in a second. But does anybody else do that? Release their turning movement data to the public or anyone else? Or is it all in-house? Nicholas says, I think only through grammar requests. Jeff is asking then again, follow up, if so, in what form? Margaret's saying we are more than willing to share and are looking to host online. John Zurich says BC's data is posted publicly. Okay, and Margaret says eventually. So it sounds like things are kind of in transition, Jeff. People I think would like to have it posted, and some people like John in BC are posting it publicly, maybe not in a common format right now. Okay, good. So going back to the interface here, there is one additional tab. I'm trying to find a site, an intersection that has more than one count on it. Okay, so there is another tab here which has counts, where you can actually go back and view the historical turning movements taken at this particular intersection. So in this case, there are two, one in 2012 and one in 2016, that look like that. Okay, and I'm going to go over these things in a little bit. There's a different UI that looks exactly like this, but I'll be demoing in a second. So here's what a count looks like basically, and we'll look at the reports and vehicle records here in a bit. So that's the intersection management. So implementing turning movements does add an additional management requirement for you guys. In some cases, we haven't talked about this in our roads and highways discussions, but it's been at the back of my mind. Places like Idaho, where you're actually storing intersection information in roads and highways, this is another link we could create. We can actually suck out the intersection information from roads and highways and manage this table automatically without a lot of user intervention, hopefully. For Iowa, they made, we had a huge upfront data load to load all their intersections into the system, and then they just at this point manage it all through Jackalope. So it's essentially Jackalope is the intersection repository, and so that's something to keep in mind if you're doing it. Like for you, Nicholas, that's another hurdle. Is now all of a sudden you got another object to administer. Making sure you have your intersections in there. Although if you go to the Idaho paradigm that you have been thinking about of storing intersection in roads and highways, then maybe it's a gimme. Maybe it's just automatically done. So just something to think about. You do have to manage intersections. Okay. So let's talk about loading the data. Currently, the only data that's supported is an access database format that Iowa uses and MyoVision. The MyoVision has a specific CSV format that we're interested in that you can get from their website. And I don't know the information off the top of my head, but if you're interested in using the turning movement program, contact us, and I'll tell you specifically what output you're looking for from the MyoVision software. So when we're going to do an Iowa file here. We're just going to submit this file, and there's two ways this works. In this way, using the Iowa database, basically there's more than one turning movement per file. So what this is doing is it's reading the file and uploading it to the server, and then it's supplying a list of all the turning movement counts in that file. With MyoVision, it looks almost identical to this, but instead of selecting one file, you can select, a whole directory or whatever. Select whatever files you want, hit upload, and then instead of instead of referencing one, it's still referencing one turning movement per line. It's just there's a one-to-one relationship between turning movement files and turning movements here, whereas here there's a one-to-many relationship. So down here we have the information. At this point, if I were just to select everything and hit load, it would load all those into the database. At this point, it hasn't done that. What it's done is just gives us a summary of this file, whether the data has already been run, whether it hasn't, the begin date, number of hours in the file. And this is something that might be iOS specific, I'm not sure. That's something we'll need to talk about when we start implementing other people like Idaho. Iowa uses this template paradigm where they do turning movements, and so their field crew might go out there for a couple hours in the morning, a couple hours at noon, and a couple hours in the evening. And, they will actually start counting before that time and maybe a little bit after that time. And so the template is, it chops the data up so that you have those 2 hours in the morning, 3 hours, and, I'm just making those numbers up, but you get what I'm saying. It basically creates a template, and this is what all 7-hour turning movements look like. They have these 2 hours in the morning, these in the afternoon, and this in the evening. And they have, I think, 3 different templates, one of which is a no template. No template is just, it takes the data, whatever it is, and it keeps it all. 24-hour template means it chops off into a 24-hour count, and then a 7 hours, what we're looking at here. That may be something that's specific to Iowa and no one else would want to use. And once they've set this information, they can select what they want to hit and then hit go. I'm only going to hit one. It does, I noticed our server is being a little bit slow, and I did this earlier and it took like 30 seconds. What it does at this point, if it's, if you selected them all, it's reading them all right now and performing similar QC to the QC that you see with volume data or class data. As well as making sure the movements are valid. So there's a lot more site QC in a turning movement than there is in normal data. With normal data, you have channels and lanes, right? And you can kind of match up, well, if the number of channels don't equal the number of lanes, well, then we've got a problem. With intersections, it's a lot more complicated than that, because, you've got an east leg wanting to go to a west leg, but you've set in your intersection that east can't go west, so that's a problem. So there's a lot of geometry checks in the intersection that's not done in the normal data processing.
There's a small error on that page. If you click all and there's say 25 files, it'll only do 10 files at a time. What's on your screen? Then you have to exit and come back in again.
To probably increase this.
Even if you increase it to 25, it only takes about 10 files at a time. Otherwise, it'll do nothing.
Okay, well, I'll look into that. I didn't realize that. All right, I'm going to switch over to somewhere else here and let that finish. Okay, and when it's, so we've looked at load and we've looked at intersection management. When it's done, you have the count list. And there's 2 ways to look at counts. We've already seen one. One way is to go to the intersection that you're interested in and then view the counts tab, which, just do that real quickly, just to refresh your memory. Just click on something, we go to the counts, and I pick something without a count, but you get the idea. There's a counts tab there. Are you serious? Or maybe it's being slow. I don't know. It's still, no, it's done. Here's what it looks like when it's done. You get information about the count, if it failed new QC, and you know how many things got inserted. This one definitely has counts. I can feel it. There we go. So this is one way to look at the data that you've submitted. Find the intersection through the intersection list and click on it here. The other way is through the count list here. And this is similar to kind of the report screen, the report engine, where you can view things by process date or data date. If you just want to see all the turning movements, you can do that and hit go. And I think that's probably what we're looking at here. But you can just look at turning movements processed today or turning movements processed between 2 dates. And those dates can either be the process date or the data date. So I think that's very similar to what you see in the report engine. You can double click on a particular count. And what it does is it brings up the exact same screen you're looking at in the intersection management. So this and this are the same screen. That just looks slightly different because of the coloring. But what it's really doing is it's bringing up the intersection and then highlighting the count that you selected. So I double clicked on the 2016 count. It actually brought up the entire intersection. So you see the 2016 count, but you also see the 2012 count in there. You can go through and pick what data you're interested in looking at. So if you just, right now we're looking at all bins, but if you just want to see how passenger cars moved, I don't know if you noticed, but this used to be a higher number. So 53 we're moving on that leg, or you can do combos. So 3 combos were going that direction, 2 went north, 1 went south. You can also do it by time. If you're interested in a particular interval, you could do that. You could also just look at a report, which probably most people do. Our turning movement report is the Iowa kind of standard report that looks like this. It has multiple pages, 1 page per bin plus a total page. So the first page is the total page. This gives you information over here on the left about the site. It gives you factor information, and this is important, and this includes hourly factoring. So if your turning movement counts are less than 24 hours, you have to have hourly factors implemented in Jackalope, which not everybody uses. In fact, maybe only Iowa uses, I'm not sure. So if you want to adjust up and get a preliminary ADT and it's not quite 24 hours, you can use hourly factors to do that. On the total volume, it basically looks like the diagram you're just looking at, although in black and white. And these numbers here are factored. So these are, that 120 right there is not something you saw on that other screen. It was like 50 something or 60 something. This has been factored up using the factors here. So this would be as if this were a 24-hour count. And we get the actual raw values down here by hour. Here's the passenger vehicles. Same information, the same information, but not factored. So here you see 53, that number is not factored. Single unit and then combo. Okay. And this report can also be broken out into 15 minutes instead. Right now it's showing hourlies. You could do 15 minutes.
Another real nice thing that you can do is you can open Jackalope up twice or open up 2 windows, and you can put the 2016 on one screen and then open it up again and put the 2012 right next to it. And you can look and see, you can look at historically that way through a visual.
Yeah, that's cool. I didn't think about that. But yeah, that's true. This is just a URL. So I just copied the URL from up here. And then, yeah, so if we wanted to do the 2012 over here, especially if you had 2 monitors, that'd be cool. I'm just on a laptop.
Also a question in the chat for you, Joe.
Rebecca asks, can these intersection graphics include lane configurations on each approach? I think it, I mean, yeah, I mean, I think it could do lane configurations. Movements generally aren't lane at a lane resolution, I don't think. Is that true? Is that a true statement? Does anybody do turning movements that, because it's just this leg to this leg, right? It's not this leg, lane 2 to this leg, lane 3.
No,
Is
it's
it?
no lane configuration. It's just the general configuration towards or away from the center of the count.
But in terms of just having a nice diagram to look at, Rebecca, if that's what you're going for, yeah, I mean, I mean, that should be pretty easy to do.
Now, we do have our manual counters out in the field draw a map. And so the map does show each individual lane. And we can compare, we can hold that up next to this graphic, this graph. And,
Yeah, and that would look, I mean, so like in this case, this looks like a on-ramp, off-ramp. This is probably, right, if we were looking at a map, this would be like an interstate down here, right? And this is an on-ramp or an off-ramp of the intersection, off-ramp kind of thing. And then here's the cross street.
Yep,
right?
That's exactly it.
So yeah, so in this case, this is a one-way street, this is a one-way street, or ramp, right? This is an on-ramp or off-ramp, on-ramp. We do have the directional indicator here. So you have the directional, these just aren't directional. That's why you don't see that yellow line in the middle. But yeah, I mean, if this were 3 lanes, for example, and you had 3 white lines, I mean, we don't want to make it busy. We don't want to clutter up the numbers, but maybe there is a way, like maybe even just down here under the numbers to put, 1, 2, 3 white lines to indicate that that was a 3-lane. I mean, that might be cool. Is that kind of what you're going for, Rebecca? Okay, something like that. It would be helpful if we were doing operations analysis. Fair, thanks. So yeah, I mean, I could see that this does, I mean, you couldn't tell the difference between if this were a 5-lane ramp, with this many turn lanes, and they would all look the same. So I can see why that would be interesting information to have there. Yep. There's another one. Mark from Iowa says each intersection would need to be coded by the number of lanes in each leg. Well, in Iowa, I mean, I agree with you, Mark. In Iowa, we might be able to cheat because each of these legs, I'm going to probably lie here. Isn't it true that most of the time, okay, yeah, I'm a liar. If you associate sites with the legs, we could pull the lane information from the sites. And you wouldn't have to do that, Mark. So Mark was saying we'd have to code the number of lanes in each leg. And I agree, that would be that would be a lot more work unless you've associated these legs to sites. And the sites do have to have, number of lanes in each direction, so. Good point. Okay. So we were just looking at the report. You can view the raw data here. This is basically the bin data. So you can do the usual filtery things. If you just want to look at bin number 1, you could do that. And by movement. So here's the number of counts in the north to east, north to south, etc. You can also view it, this information as well as MyoVision, I think. MyoVision also comes in as vehicle records. So what's actually given to us looks more like this, where you've got a movement at 7:02 for bin number 1 going from north to southbound. So this is what the actual data looks like. We're just getting vehicle records, which is basically a timestamp, a bin, and the from and to leg. So you can view that data here as well. And I don't know how this is actually used, Iowa. I don't know if you actually use these a lot or whether you just look at the reports, but it is available for you if you need to. And that, let's see, did I cover everything? I think I did. So loading data, intersection management, and count list. I think I covered everything. Does anybody have any questions? If you're interested in this, there's a little bit of, so there's something analogous to binding rule, or not binding rules, interpretation modules here. So in fact, that's what I need to talk to Raymond about when the users group is over, is how do you bind these to intersections and things like that. So there might be a little bit of coding work to do if you understand what I'm saying. So when you load data, just short-term count data, it goes through the system. We generally know how to associate that data with a site because we have logic in there that says, well, for Missouri, if it's a diamond file, we look at these 4 digits, and if those 4 digits are this, it belongs to this site. And there's something analogous to that here as well, so you don't have to manually go through and say, this turning movement belongs to this intersection, and then this leg goes to this leg here, and things like that. So there might be a little bit of work to do, but if you just wanted to try vanilla turning movements, without any customization, you're free to do that. It's all in, I think it's all in RC5, isn't it, Catherine? Do you have any idea?
Yeah, it will be. The other caveat, you have to have a file format that we understand. So if it's not the MyoVision flavor that you said that you can give information on, then they'll need to get us their data files, and we'd have to write a reader for it. So they, off the bat, wouldn't be able to just submit any old file. And then there is a question from Stephen in there also.
Well, I would like to jump in and say there is one ideal MyoVision format that we're interested in. So if you're using MyoVision, I'll tell you what format to download from, because MyoVision just has a website that you can go and download, the correct format from. I'll tell you what the correct format is. But if it's some other format, then yeah, we'll definitely have to code that just like we would a reader. Stephen's asking, are there any agencies who take their manual counts and the results are used in the total count program, so a short-term count wouldn't be needed? I mean, I know the answer to that, at least one case, is yes. I mean, yeah, but that's a good question. Does anybody else, I mean, it sounds like most people don't really have a strong, institutional turning movement program at their level. But I know Iowa, if they have enough data, they do include it in their short-term program. I think I'm speaking truth. You guys can correct me if I'm wrong. And yeah, so Noah says, yes, we are correct. And if you got a video camera out there for 48 hours or 24 hours, remember we can use 24 hours now for your short-term count ADTs if it's functionally classed correctly. Then yeah, I'm hoping we see more of that. Margaret says, we are negotiating where to do turning movement counts with the local NPOs to help with their travel demand modeling. Okay. Yeah, and then you can throw it all into the system. Idaho's who we're working on right now for turning movements with MyoVision and getting the binding in and all that fun stuff. Nicholas is saying, we've been looking at whether we can use the continuous turning movement data from our operations group where they have Wavetronics matrix units to see if we can do that, Stephen. Initial outcome is it may be able to supplement up to 1,000 count locations. Wow. The limiting factor being that counts do not report classification. Okay, so just be volume data. Still, that's pretty awesome. 1,000 count locations. Yes, I think we talked about the Wavetronics matrix units, Nicholas, once upon a time. So basically continuous turning movement data. Margaret says, Nicholas, let me know how that goes. We have some in our MPO areas. Stephen saying, we have verified the Wavetronics counters for the non-traditional ADT pool fund. Are those the same, the matrix counters, Stephen, do you know? The turning movement counters? Don't know. Yeah. So that is something that's going to have to come down. I mean, what we're talking about right now is, manual counts or short-term counts, really, because they are going to be a continuous stream of 24 or 48 hours data, which get factored up. When we start looking at Nicholas's data, which is continuous data, 24/7, 365 days a year, then we're talking about data that we can use for creating factors and all the fun good stuff like that. Nicholas says, matrix is different from the HDs. The matrix units is a front fire device. Okay. Nicholas, would you like us to verify your matrix counters? Wow, sounds like free labor, Nicholas. You were going to do it for free, right, Stephen? Nicholas, sure. If you wouldn't mind providing more info on it, it would be on our operations group who manages that equipment. Okay. Any other questions on? Stephen says, yes, it'll be free. Not me, but the, pool fund. So the pool fund study is going to pay for it. Cool. And this is the non-traditional ADT pool fund study, I'm guessing. Stephen says we are doing a lot of counting all around the US. Many technologies are being verified. Yeah, so it'd probably be good to have some new technology. Okay. Well, if there aren't any other questions, I'll still be here drinking coffee probably. If you have any questions, yell them in chat. Otherwise, we are looking good for a 1 o'clock, or 1 Pacific time to look at bike and pedestrian data setup.